So just real quick, the framing question. We saw a bit of this morning, essentially in terms of healthcare systems. UK, as an efficient system, is in the middle of the pack. Number one, we're seeing out in the East, so Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan doing very well in terms of efficiency. This is Bloomberg data. US, way behind. In terms of what's happening in Europe, Northern Europe, doing very well. I'll do it, yeah. So what are we doing about it? From a UK perspective, what's happening? It started back in 2015. The UK government published the Future Aging Population Report. That made a recommendation to lead to the industrial strategy. From the industrial strategy, that framed a lot of the challenges that some of us are facing today. We personally don't think that's going far enough, so this morning's session was talking about going the APPG and taking a life course approach to data. So how do we age well from the time that we're born? Now, this is a session around what's happening in the UK. The UK's strategy, how many people have seen the UK strategy from the Aging Society Grand Challenge? Okay, 4 pillars. We don't care about the fancy gadgets if we can't pay to put food on the table or pay the rent. So financial wellness is fundamental, and that's part of why we've seen this earlier. Health and care, we've talked a lot about today. Prevention is the key to a lot of what we've been talking about. So reframing it from a national illness service to a national wellness service. The social care service, how do we keep people out of the health and care social service? But the environment, the third pillar. The third pillar is about the physical environment. The physical environment has a tremendous impact on who we are and how we are healthy. The homes that we build, how high the ceilings are, the natural light, but also the technology that goes in to support the individuals. But also the community, the neighborhoods. Do we have the opportunity to walk to the station? Do we have the opportunity to go swimming or walking or cycling, whatever exercise that we want to do? So the community has an impact on who we are and our health. And then the last one, it says work, learning, and purpose. For me, it's purpose first. Someone said earlier in the day that we spend most of our time at work. Work gives us purpose. For those who have jobs, there are people who are at home for the purpose of delivering at home or delivering care. So how do we have purpose once we have retired? There is a cliff that men in their 50s face, whether they know it or not. If they're at work, they retire. Who are they when they retire? It can be dangerous for older men if they're not prepared for it. So there's a lot happening in that particular space. Some of it is around financial MOT, but the other part is around work. Some of us need to work. Some of us don't have to. Some of us want to. We heard in Japan, there's a huge number of people who want to work. So these are the 4 pillars. The industrial strategy is primarily around the health and care bit, but more on the prevention side. But we want to take that further with the with the APPG. We are making a recommendation to the government after PERDA is over. But the work that we have done is talked about taking a life course approach. So the industrial strategy really focuses on the 55 to 85s. So how do you address a life course approach? So we were talking about data, early genomics and epigenetics and exercise earlier in life. How do we help people adopt those lifestyles earlier in life? My personal want is to have a red book for life. We start with a red book. Why don't we use that and have data that we capture throughout our life? There was really great evidence on your slide about being able to increase disability-free years, which is how the industrial strategy looks at measuring healthy life expectancy, and that's the goal by 2035, 5 extra years of healthy life expectancy. So I'll run through this quick because some of you saw this earlier. Leadership, national leadership. We talked about science and genomics a lot this afternoon, but technology is not always a problem. Our HSBC colleague, who I'm not sure is here anymore, it's about commercialization, but it's the business model. You know, how do we get these things to market and pay for them? A lot of what we do is not technology risk. We need to eliminate the technology risk and really get the commercials sorted out. So business model is a key part of it. Just summarize, for those who weren't here, you know, forgive me, Kenji, I'm not going to summarize your slides as well as I probably should, but in Japan, it was really interesting talking about Japan as a bellwether for the Western world, and taking a total systems approach, including corporations. So your colleague from METI was talking about how companies are really a part of the solution, and we need to do more of that here. But looking at the value-based system, so Kenji talked about health and coverage and fair financials, the social determinants and globalization. In the US, it's much more disjointed. It's state by state. Someone was quite proud about what was happening in California. That's not the US. That's only part of the problem, you know. At least here in the UK, we have an industrial strategy. In Japan, they've got a national strategy. You know, a lot of what's happening in the US is put onto corporates. It's sort of the American way to work with corporates. And someone, Stephen Johnson from Aging 2.0 earlier talked about the hero CEO and relying on corporates to deliver some of this. And some of it works, some of it doesn't. To be honest, I like living here. There's lots of things I complain about here. That's not one of the things I complain about. I'm very happy about having a total systems perspective to this. And then we heard about the life map. And in particular, the top right corner, there's a big role models in terms of age and percentile. We need to create new role models because people are living longer. And it's no longer the three-stage life. So what our grandparents did or our parents did is not the model for you and I. So what are you going to do? How are you going to create your imprint of your life? So that's quite important. Israel was really interesting. I didn't realize they've got 100% electronic medical records. So they've got a massive data set, cradle to grave. And Sam earlier talked about a hammer looking for a nail with big data analytics. They want to apply that data analytics. And what's really interesting is they talked about the incubators that are willing to take risk. You know, failure is okay. And they're willing to invest in that as long as you come up with something in the end, but it doesn't preclude you from doing it again and again. So that's a bit of what happened this morning. In terms of, on a global basis, you know, we saw earlier in terms of projects and initiatives in the healthcare approach and in the geroscience and aging demographics. There's only a few in the middle who are doing all three of them. But what does that mean for healthy life expectancy? You know, the longevity heat map, it's still out in the East. It's still Singapore, Japan, you know, Canada. US is not the model. You know, Northern Europe, Spain, France is much more of what we ought to be looking for in terms of healthy life expectancy.